Zane had never seen anything quite like it. 300 feet of scaled muscle and horned terror slithering across the crimson plains of Vorexis. 9, and yet it had paused. Not from pain, not from exhaustion, but because it had locked eyes with him. And flinched. The moment felt surreal. 1 second, Zane was clutching the barrel of his kinetic rifle, heart hammering against his ribs, and the next, the legendary apex predator of this hostile world, catalogued in galactic bestiaries as an alpha Vorexian spine tyrant. Twitch tilted its head and retreated a single step. He wasn't sure who was more surprised, him, or the team of xenobiologists on his comm link who had just gone silent. Did it just hesitate? Came Dr. Alina Ravine's voice finally, trembling with a mix of awe and disbelief. Zane didn't answer. He didn't need to. The evidence was right in front of them. The thing, this monster that had vaporized entire outposts, torn through armored scout mechs, and left nothing but blood-soaked sand in its wake, was staring at a human, and backing away. 6 hours earlier, Zane's boots had crunched into the gravel of Vorexis. 9 for the first time. He wasn't a scientist nor a soldier. He was what the Terran Coalition called a contact specialist. His job was somewhere between a diplomat and a distraction. Put the human face in front of whatever unknown terror the universe vomited out. Officially, he was there to assist with safe observation. Unofficially, the researchers didn't trust their orbital drones to not get melted. It's purely behavioral study, Dr. Ravine had explained with bright eyes and a nervous twitch. We won't even get near the creature. Lies. All lies. Within 2 hours, the creature was awake, aware, and angry. The drones were gone. The containment field failed. And the only thing standing between the monster and the panicking scientists was Zane. He didn't run. He didn't scream. He simply stared, and something primal passed between him and the beast. Now, as the creature began to circle, its slit-pupil eyes flicking back to Zane's with unsettling frequency, the comms buzzed again. What's it doing? Why isn't it attacking? Another voice asked. Zane didn't know. He wasn't a xenopsychologist. But he did know one thing. The way that thing looked at him wasn't random. It was cautious. Maybe even respectful. The camp was half ruined now. Metal walls crumpled like foil. Crates overturned. A gaping trench where the spine tyrant had dragged one of the crawler tanks. But there Zane stood. Eyes locked. He took a step forward. The creature flinched again. He felt the shift, like some ancient memory buried in the marrow of his bones. An echo of predatory dominance. Something ancient and unspoken. And the beast, this galaxy's terror, understood it too. Later, as the team scrambled to regroup and re-establish the comm link to the orbiting vessel, Dr. Ravine cornered him. We need to understand this. Why did it stop? Why you? Zane shrugged, tugging at the neck of his worn-out utility vest. Maybe it saw something familiar. She blinked. Familiar? In a human? That thing's older than our solar system. Exactly, he said. Maybe it remembers us. She stared at him like he'd just whispered a ghost story. The Galactic Council had long debated the evolutionary impact of humans on interstellar species. We were new in the cosmic sense, barely out of our cradle. But wherever humans went, predator populations changed their behaviors. Fast. Some fled. Some submitted. Some, like the tyrant, hesitated. Zane had heard rumors. On Eltra, the hive fangs avoided abandoned human armor. On Archimede, thunderlions refused to attack unless their prey looked away first. And now, on Vorexis 9, something more ancient had blinked. That night, with emergency generators humming and a wounded silence hanging over the outpost, Zane stared at the perimeter footage on loop. The tyrant didn't look confused. It looked haunted. Was it possible that something in the human gaze, some echo of Earth's own bloody evolution, triggered a response? We had hunted megafauna to extinction, tamed fire, conquered oceans. Was there a look in our eyes, a glint of inherited violence, that resonated across biology itself? Or maybe it was something deeper. Not fear. Recognition. The next day, the council ordered a full behavioral investigation. But the scientists were terrified. Not of the creature. Of Zane. It watches you, Alina said quietly as they stood at the edge of the research dome. Like it's waiting. Zane nodded. Maybe it is. When the second creature appeared from the eastern range, smaller, faster, with talons like molten obsidian, it didn't charge the base. It didn't roar. It stopped. and stared, right at Zane. The others ducked behind blast shields. Zane remained still. Two apex predators now, both frozen by a simple stare. "Zane," came a whisper through his earpiece. This doesn't make sense." But it did. Not scientifically, not logically, but in the bones, in the silence between heartbeats. The predators of the galaxy weren't just sensing threat. They were sensing kin. A rival species that didn't grow claws or fangs, but fire, will, and madness. And they remembered. When Zane walked out into the open, alone, no rifle, no armor, the spine tyrant lowered its head. Not submission. Respect. Or maybe warning. Either way, the universe had changed. And every predator in it was beginning to understand. Humanity wasn't prey. It never had been. It was something older. Something they'd fought before. And lost. Zane stood at the edge of the scorched clearing, breath held, as the second creature continued to stare. It had a different build, shorter, leaner, with rippling muscle under obsidian armor plates, but the same expression, that same wariness, that same pause. A predator, yes, but no longer convinced it ruled this world. Behind him, the scientists were losing their minds. "This breaks every rule of predator psychology," Alina hissed, practically yanking her hair out. "There's no logic to this. It should be attacking." "Maybe," Zane said quietly. "That's the point. No one had expected the tyrant to return, let alone bring company. And yet, here they were, two apex creatures of legend behaving like sentinels. Watching. Waiting. Not out of curiosity. Out of calculation. Back in the observation dome, the footage was being played on repeat. Zane standing like a totem, unmoving. The beasts circling, but never crossing an invisible line. The data confused the system so badly that the threat recognition AI labeled him as the aggressor. "We've scanned everything," said Dr. Malik, the xenoneurologist. "No pheromones. No energy fluctuations. No parapsychic fields. Nothing out of the ordinary, except him." "I'm not doing anything," Zane snapped. "I'm just standing there." "Exactly," Malik muttered. "And they're responding like you're a nuclear warhead." By the third day, Orbital Command had gotten involved. A delegation of military advisors landed under heavy guard, demanding direct control of the situation. "You're an unarmed civilian. You shouldn't be this close to the containment zone," barked Commander Estra, a woman whose titanium spine was only half metaphorical. Zane raised an eyebrow. "Containment zone? The only reason your containment exists is because I'm here." She didn't like that. Not one bit. But when her soldiers tried to move Zane, gently at first, and then more forcefully, the spine tyrant let out a sound like tectonic plates grinding. A low, soul-vibrating growl that made every piece of glass in the dome crack at once. No one touched Zane again. It was no longer a scientific anomaly. It was a political incident. And Zane was beginning to feel it in his bones. That there was more at play than alien curiosity or evolutionary instinct. The beasts didn't just recognize him. They were reacting to something ancient. Something buried deep. He began digging through old files. Not logs or reports. Myths. Folk tales. Ancient Earth cultures spoke of creatures who turned away from the eyes of men. Wolves that wouldn't approach a steady gaze. Lions that second-guessed a man who didn't flinch. It wasn't just biology, it was legacy. Firelight. Blood. Will. Back when humans weren't just survivors. They were monsters in their own right. He took that to Alina, who stared at him with a face torn between awe and scientific horror. "You're saying they remember us? Even though we've never encountered these species before?" Zane leaned back in his chair. "Maybe not us, but something like us. Something we used to be. Maybe it's not memory. Maybe it's archetype. Maybe we fit some role in the universe they've seen before." The tension grew by the hour. The research outpost was now under full lockdown. No one in or out without orbital clearance. And Zane, he was still out there. They set up an observation platform near the ridge where the tyrant often perched at dawn. Zane sat in the open air, coffee in hand, eyes steady. And the creature came. Every morning. Not attacking. Not charging. Watching. The second one followed suit, establishing its own perimeter near the west ravine. Now two of them were tracking Zane's movements like he was the sun, and they were ancient stones turning to meet it. Speculation spread like wildfire. Was he broadcasting something subconsciously? Was he bonded to the beasts? Had humanity evolved with some dormant trait that no one understood? Theories popped up faster than they could be disproven. Then came the third. This one was different. Bigger. Scarred. Its face bore the claw marks of battle and a long, deep ridge down its left eye socket. And it didn't hesitate. When it appeared, it roared, loud enough to rupture comms channels. Zane stood his ground. The other two creatures responded instantly, interposing themselves between the newcomer and the outpost. Not to protect Zane, to challenge the third. It was a standoff unlike any recorded in xenozoological history. A dominance ritual. The newcomer was testing the boundaries. And those boundaries, apparently, included a lone human. Zane took a step forward. The third creature froze. He stared. It took a step back. Commander Estra, watching from the control dome, turned slowly. What the hell is he? No one answered. Because by now, even the most skeptical among them had started to feel it. That strange electric sense that Zane wasn't just an observer. He was a symbol, a mirror, a remnant of something buried deep in galactic time. The third beast retreated into the valley. Not defeated, but wary. The first two resumed their posts. That night, the research dome's AI flagged a data anomaly. The beasts had been transmitting subsonic pulses, inaudible to humans but rhythmic, patterned. A language, perhaps, or warning beacons. Zane listened to the playback. It wasn't random. It was repetition. A pulse loop that increased in strength every time he stepped forward. Not fear. Not aggression. Recognition. The scientists argued over implications. The military argued over tactics. The council sent directives demanding immediate withdrawal. Zane just stared out into the darkness. He didn't know what he was anymore. Just a man. Or a memory. He thought of Earth. Of wolves that stopped chasing when the hunted turned and stood tall. Of ancient hunters who walked silently, fire in their hands and madness in their eyes. He wondered if, across the stars, that story had played out before. If humans weren't an anomaly, but a constant. A pattern the universe couldn't forget. The third creature returned. But this time it didn't challenge. It waited. And Zane, feeling the weight of ancestors in his spine, feeling the hum of primal gravity between his shoulder blades, walked out to meet it. Not with weapons. With his eyes. And the stars watched, silent and cold, as something ancient stirred in the gaze between two killers who recognized each other. Something old. And unfinished. The silence between Zane and the third beast stretched for what felt like a lifetime. No growl, no breath, just the hum of unseen tension pressing into the atmosphere like a loaded spring. The creature's massive frame loomed like a living mountain, one eye milky from an old injury, the other fixed on Zane with cold awareness. Zane didn't blink. The two original apex predators stood off to the side, muscles taut, heads lowered. The entire camp watched through scopes and feeds, holding their breath. No one dared to interrupt. Zane took another step forward. The third beast's talons flexed, but it didn't strike. It inhaled deeply through flared nostrils, and then let out a slow, almost confused exhale. It wasn't what it expected. Zane wasn't what it expected. Not prey, not threat, but something else. Behind Zane, the ground command team scrambled, whispering possibilities. Is it challenging him? Estra asked. No, Alina whispered, eyes wide. It's testing him. The beast lowered its massive head to Zane's level. Zane kept his eyes locked. It let out a low sound, neither growl nor snarl, more like a question. And somehow, impossibly, Zane felt it. Not words, not thoughts, but an instinctive communication. A primal vibration in his spine that whispered something older than language. Are you one of us? His breath caught. Maybe he was. Maybe humanity had evolved differently, not just biologically, but cosmically. A predator too clever to fight with claws. One that survived by turning the rules of nature into tools. He reached out. Not fully, just a gesture. Not toward submission, but invitation. And the third beast backed down. Not in fear. In recognition. Across the ridgeline, a sound like rolling thunder echoed. Dozens, no hundreds, of smaller apex-class creatures were emerging from the ravines, the caves, the shadows. Vorexis. 9 wasn't just home to a few dominant species. It was a throne world for the galaxy's most terrifying beasts. And they had come. Every creature kept a careful distance, but every gaze was the same. On Zane. Not as prey. Not even as alpha. As echo. As memory. Orbital Command sent out panicked messages. Evacuation mandatory. All personnel must retreat. This is a planetary-level threat. But Zane didn't move, because they weren't threatening. They weren't advancing. They were observing, gathering, waiting for something, waiting for him. He turned slowly, meeting the gaze of the three apex beasts nearest him. All three bowed, not low, but slightly, as if acknowledging something sacred. And suddenly Zane understood. This wasn't about humans being predators. It was about humans being remembered, not by individuals, but by instinct, deep in the blood, written into the genome of every creature who had ever known true danger. Something about the way a human stands, the way their eyes burn, not with hunger, but purpose. A war, maybe. A time when Earth-like creatures ruled, or devastated, parts of the galaxy before vanishing. The tyrant's hesitation wasn't about fear. It was history. He looked toward the sky. The stars above were still, watching. And then the real test came. The creatures moved. Not in attack, but in formation. The third beast stepped forward, snarled at the others, then sat, expectant. Zane didn't understand at first. They're waiting. Alina's voice came softly through the earpiece. For something you. To do what? Lead. His chest tightened. He raised his hand again. Not to command, but to acknowledge. A ripple passed through the beasts. Heads turned. Spines straightened. The formation broke, only to reform facing outward, as if they were forming a perimeter around him. Zane swallowed hard. This was more than behavior, more than myth. This was ceremony. At dawn, the sky cracked with fire. Orbital Command, growing desperate, launched 2 warning shots into the upper atmosphere. The creatures didn't flinch. Zane turned toward the nearest drone relay and activated his mic. Stand down. You're not authorized, snapped Estra. No, he said slowly, coldly. But neither are you. This planet doesn't belong to you. Or them. It never did. He looked back toward the beasts. They remember what the stars forgot. There was silence. Estra finally broke it. What are you, Zane? He smiled faintly. Human. By the time the shuttle arrived to extract the remaining researchers, the creatures had dispersed, calm, silent, fading back into the ravines like smoke into night. But the footage, the data, and the moment would never be forgotten. Zane stayed behind. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. The council would try to bury it, explain it away, classify it into extinction. But they couldn't erase the look in the creature's eyes. Recognition. Respect. Something older than language. Older than civilization. A truth that whispered across the stars. Humans weren't special because they were new. They were special because they were ancient. And the galaxy was finally starting to remember. As the sun dipped below the crimson cliffs of Verexis, 9, Zane sat alone on the ridge. The wind blew like breath. And from the shadows, he felt them still watching. Not with fear, with familiarity. As if to say, we've met before. And next time, we won't forget.